Hello and welcome to this special ham radio coronation video. I'm shooting this a few days before the coronation of our King Charles III. But you know, I do remember the previous coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. It was in 1953. I was just 10 years old, watching it on my grandfather's black and white TV. We didn't have a TV at home, but my grandfather did. It's one of these TVs where you open the doors and behind it was this magic screen. You could actually see pictures. You could see live pictures. And on that particular day, live pictures of the coronation and other familiar things that appeared on the screen from time to time. Black and white TV, well, it was 405 lines, I think, and it was on a frequency of 42 megahertz, which turned out to be a rather unfortunate frequency for ham radio operators because the second harmonic of 21 megahertz, the 15 meter band, was 42 megahertz. It was very difficult to avoid completely obliterating TV screens, but in 1953, we didn't have the 21 megahertz band. That only came on stream around about 1955, 1956, I think. And we didn't have the walk bands either. All we had was 160 metres, 80 metres, 40 metres, 20 metres and 10 metres. And of course on 40 metres, we only had 100 kilohertz. We had 7 to 7.1 megahertz. And would you believe it, that in 1953 we actually lost a bit of the 160 metre band. Yes, the original 160 metre band went from 1.715 megahertz to 2 megahertz. And for some reason it was decided that the ham radio operators were using too much of this bandwidth that we needed, this rather valuable bandwidth. So they chopped off the bottom bit. So instead of starting at 1.715 megahertz, it started at 1.8 megahertz. Maybe it was for the trawlers, I don't know. We used to do that. It's a trawler band, that part of the radio spectrum. You know, I've got a few old books tucked away. I've got a cool book here. 1960 ham radio cool book. But you know, it's interesting to go back and look at what magazines were around back in 1953. Well, the first is the RSGB magazine. In those days, we didn't have Radcom, we had the Bulletin. Probably a lot cheaper in those days as well. Practical wireless was very popular also in those days because a lot of people built their own radios. And would you believe the circulation then was around about 50,000? How things have changed. Oh, dear old shortwave magazine, edited by Austin Forsyth. It was the magazine that introduced me to ham radio. It was the only magazine really on the newsstands then that covered amateur radio. It was a great magazine. Very sad to see it go. Then there was Radio Constructor. I used to occasionally buy it. I used to browse through it in the newsagents, and if there was anything interesting, I used to buy it. Well, I was working on pocket money in those days. And a magazine that hasn't changed its name and has remained as popular as ever is from our friends across the pond, QST. Do you know, I was actually able to buy that magazine in the 1960s in my local newsagent. Gosh, you won't see that on your newsagent stand now, will you? Mind you, you won't see a lot of other magazines on the newsagent stand either. Of course, in those days, we didn't have the manufacturers either. Yaesu, Icon, Kenwood, they didn't exist. Even KW Electronics didn't exist. They hadn't started or didn't start business until 1956. So it was really war surplus equipment that provided the main substance of any ham radio station, particularly receivers. We had the AR-88, the CR-100, the 1155, the R-107, the BC-348. And on the transmit side, we had 19 sets, even the B2. I mean, the B2 transceiver now is worth a lot of money, but they were quite common in those days. I've actually got a B2. That's the transmitter, that's the receiver, plug-in coils, crystal for the transmitter, and a pair of genuine headphones as well. I wish I had the power supply to go with it, but anyway, it's really nice. Slow motion dial, and well, it looks a business, doesn't it? And of course, a lot of the equipment was home built. I mean, you could get components very easily. There was lots of companies selling components. You went down Praed Street, Tottenham Court Road, Lisle Street, those places in London. There was a mass of components there and all sorts of interesting gear. You could spend quite an amount of money there. Well, I say quite an amount of money. It wasn't that expensive. But of course, it was a case of necessity. You had to build your own things in those days. You needed a soldering iron. That was the main thing, a soldering iron. If you didn't have a soldering iron, you wouldn't get on the air. You also had to do a lot of repairs as well. But anyway, home built was the name of the game in those days. Ham radio, you had to build your own equipment to get on the air. Yes, you used surplus stuff, but you know, there were the things you had to connect up, and very often this war surplus equipment didn't work. You had to repair it. I mean, the reason it was there was because it didn't work. So it was quite a challenging time, but we also learned a lot in the process. I learned a lot about how radios work and how to repair radios. I also got a few belts, because we had 240 volts then, and we had HT lines of 300 or 400 volts. Gosh, you were very careful. You only needed 1 or 2 shocks, and then you were very careful before you sort of prodded around inside the gear, because you were high voltage everywhere. Gosh, I'm amazed I survived. I think I'm right in saying that in those days you had to operate Morse code for a period. I think it was 1 or 2 years. Some of you older hams may correct me on that, but I'm sure that when you got a new license, you had to operate CW for a certain amount of time. And of course, you've always had in those days to pass a Morse test. And talking about Morse, I'm still operating CW. I said in an earlier video that I've just been operating CW. You know, I haven't picked up a microphone for about 2 months now, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's a sort of a self-imposed sort of thing that I'm doing at the moment, trying to sort of brush up my CW, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it in the process and working all sorts of stations around the world. I will pick up a microphone again, but I'd probably stick with CW for perhaps another month or so before I pick up the microphone again. It's a self-imposed discipline, but I'm enjoying it, and that's the main thing. And that's the main thing about ham radio. You should do what you enjoy. Forget what others are doing. If you enjoy sending CW, fine. If you enjoy FT8, fine. People may criticise it, people may ridicule, but who cares? It's a hobby. Enjoy it. Now, interestingly enough, the RSGB have come up with an arrangement with Ofcom, I guess, to allow you as ham radio operators to use an R prefix in your call sign, and that applies throughout the whole month of May and June. If you go onto the if you go onto the RSGB website, you'll find all the details there, and if you so wish, you can actually use an R prefix in your call sign. So check it out. All you need to do is to apply for a notice of variation, which is very simple, only takes a few seconds, and then you can use this special call sign. And now, as a special promotion, if you check our website, you'll find that you can get 5% discount over this Coronation weekend. All you need to do is to key in the code KCC5. King Charles Coronation 5, KCC5 at checkout. If you enter that code, you'll get a 5% discount on almost all the products. There are one or two exceptions, particularly if we've done a special promotion on it, but otherwise you'll get a 5% discount, so it's worth taking advantage of. Go on our website, have a browse around, look at what you want, enter it as a purchase in the cart, go to checkout, and then enter KCC5, 5% discount. So, I wish you a very happy weekend. Enjoy your ham radio. Don't forget the R prefix. Bit of history, which I think is worth mentioning, which I've covered in this video. And of course, take advantage of the special prices on our website. Thanks ever so much for your support on this channel. It's much appreciated. You take care. Enjoy ham radio. And as usual, I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.